Hi guys, and welcome to episode 18 of Behind the Frame. I'm currently sitting here in Tsavo West National Park as part of our exclusive Amboseli and Tsavo safari. We've just come off of 5 nights in Amboseli and we're now on our second day here in Tsavo, and it's been an incredible trip so far. Really good stuff. Amboseli was very different to what it's been in the past, but we've got some fantastic shots nonetheless. And so I thought it would be only fair and right for me to use one of the images from Amboseli to kind of work through with you guys, and particularly focus on using the graduated filter. So here is the image. Let's have a look at some of the technical specs here, hitting I for info, and we will then cycle through some of the information on the image. So it was taken on a 5 DSR, 1/400th of a second, f5, ISO 100 and underexposing by 2/3. So this was taken with a 2470 at 24 mils. Fantastic lens for these wide angle shots. I find things like the 1635 or the 1424 have quite a bit of distortion and really only work when the subject is close to you. And so this one works really well. So at 400th of a second, enough to kind of freeze movement of the legs. f5, so with a wide angle lens, good depth of field, even at f5. Not really looking for clarity all the way throughout the frame. And underexposing by 2/3, I was using a circular polarizing filter for this as well, and you can see in the sky it's kind of nice and blue, so underexposing a little bit just to keep those nice and dark. So we're going to go straight into this and start to edit, and obviously the first thing that you will see is the horizon line is not quite straight. So I'm going to grab my little spirit level tool and I'm going to basically tell Lightroom that this is the horizon and Bob's your uncle. So there we go. One of the things to remember, because I've reset this image, I usually have it as one of my basic import presets, is we want to enable profile corrections. And what you'll see is there's a little bit of distortion and a little bit of vignetting on this lens. So by enabling that, we get rid of that. Right, let's go into the basic panel. So now we're going to do a global edit on this image. And as you can see, we've underexposed by 2/3, so we want to lift the whites a little bit. Just kind of pulling those out. I'm not going to do a global clarity adjustment just yet. Global saturation, usually to a value of 4. As you know, 4 or 5 is going to be fine. And then in the tone curve, just want to lift the lights a little bit. And if you have a look at that histogram, we've got some darks in there. Just going to pull that down just a touch. Right, now this is where the magic comes in. So I'm going to use the graduated filter. So I've selected it over there, and as you can see, now a lot of people think that you have to start at the top here, but you can actually start at any point in the frame. So hold another little tip, holding down the shift key and dragging down will make sure that this doesn't swing left and right. Sometimes people really struggle. So what this will do is ensure that this stays perfectly horizontal for you. So right, there we have it. Now these 3 lines, let's have a look. O for overlay. The effect that we're going to apply goes up to 100% on this line. Then it fades down to 50% over here, and then down to 0 over here. So as you can see, the more you drag, the greater the area that this is going to be kind of phased across. So obviously if you go and apply the effect like this, you've got a very narrow band in which the gradation is going to be applied. Whereas here we're kind of really fading it out. And so I don't want this to leave any discernible hard adjustments or lines through there. Right, so we hit O for overlay. What we want to do on this one is to drop the exposure, make the sky a little bit darker, and maybe lift a little bit of clarity into those clouds. And we can lift the whites in those clouds as well, really just making them pop just a touch. Right, so if we have a look at before and after, so there's before, that's after, very subtle. And now what we're going to do is I'm just going to use another graduated filter, and there's several ways of working this, but basically just going to apply just a little line up there. So have a look at the area that we're going to affect, and now in that area over here, what I want to do is just lift a little bit of the clarity and lift the exposure just by a touch, so just by 1/3, and so something along those lines. Now we come down to our detail panel, we open that up, we want to sharpen and mask. So holding down the Alt key, we slide out, and we're only going to try and sharpen those LEs down in the bottom of the frame because we've chosen specifically for that, and somewhere around there is where we want to be. Now this little area over here seems quite dark, so in our tone curve, 2 things that we can do. You'll see that if we increase the contrast in the shadows, that becomes very dark. If we just lift those a little bit and then come back onto our basic panel over here, and we just lift those shadows a touch, we've been able to recover some of the detail there. That just means it's not as hard as it was originally, and if you have a look, you can kind of just work out the detail. But in an instance like this, it's more about the bigger picture than it is about the actual subjects themselves, than the kind of finer details there for me. So a very quick edit, and then looking at a before and after. So a very easy and quick edit, but it really puts the polishing on this kind of image. I would have loved for there to have been more clouds in the sky, but that wasn't the case. You can only work with what you've got, but still a really nice image showing a little bit more of the environment, with major changes in the overall feel of the image, but subtle changes during the editing process. So that's the graduated filter. You can apply a number of different adjustments through there. You've got all your highlights, shadows, whites and blacks, clarity, dehaze. Each situation may require something different. So that's it from me for this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and we will catch up again next week. Cheers.